Good. I can see you good. Executive education program organized by Center for Transformative Advancement Development of African Education and CTADA International University. This class goes to be for 3 hours, 1 hour full lecture for one resource person and another full hour for one resource person. There will be moments of conversation, questions. I hope you are hearing me, right?
Not great. Not great.
All right. So
having a lot of difficulty hearing you.
Our lectures on the topic United Nations ECOSOC. I've shared the bios of the two speakers. One of the speakers is Ambassador Professor April Ripley, who is here, a diplomat and ambassador, peace ambassador to the United Nations. We sent her bio to the group, and the next one is myself, Ambassador Professor Adagiri Okeka. We are all both diplomats in the United Nations. We have been in the four corners of for more than 10 years. So the ECOSOC of education that we usually do every year is to enlighten ourselves on the knowledge we know already about the United Nations, especially with its relevance to us in the civil society community and also as an individual. So what I'm going to have today from my end is to give you an overview, a general course overview on the policy, governance, and practice. And you will look at understanding the United Nations system, the mandate and structure of ECOSOC, ECOSOC Functional Commission and subsidiary bodies, ECOSOC and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, ECOSOC accreditation and consultative status, policy processes, resolution and negotiation, stakeholder engagement and civil society participation. And then we crown it all with some practical skills for ECOSOC engagement. Why this course is necessary because our operation as civil society, as NGOs, as private business people, as non-profit is quite different from our participation as a member state. So that is why this lecture is very, very important for us to acclimatize ourselves to the working of the United Nations. As I always say, United Nations is for all of us. The only thing is that there are principal stakeholders who are member states, members of the country, and they are 193 in number. So these are government-oriented, but there are other subsidiaries of which the NGO branch, the civil society, is a very strong pillar in that aspect. And that is why we are here today. So we are going to have a conversation in form of lecture on this aspect of education. So get ready, get yourself equipped, and be able to ask questions where and where it's necessary.
Excuse me, is there a way to do closed captions? Because I am really struggling to understand you. Is there a way to do closed captions on here?
You are not hearing me or you are not understanding my voice.
I'm just having a lot of trouble. I'm missing so many words you're saying.
The audio is really bad.
My volume is very good. It's 100% high, and I don't have any noise at my background.
Excuse me, Ambassador Ginny. The question was about closed captioning. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, it should have an option of individual, whether it's your phone or laptop. The options, it says show captions. If you click on that, it should show caption.
Okay, so what do I do to it? I can
Thank
see
you.
that. You want me to leave it open? Are you hearing me now?
There we go.
We can see the caption
that
now.
could help. Yeah.
Professor Ada, they'll do that individually. So I think many have done that and can now see the captions.
Yes, I can see the captions.
Okay,
Like-
wonderful.
So can I.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my screen too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So,
Yes.
so we are starting with the history of the United Nations. How did it start and how did it come about? So the origin of United Nations came up in 1945 or 46. But before then, there was the League of Nations that was created after the World War I, and it was aimed to prevent future wars and lacked universal membership and enforcement power. So it failed to stop aggregation, leading to World War II. So the collapse of the League made it clear that the world needed a stronger, more inclusive, and more effective international organization. So in 1945, the foundational moment was to have a birth of United Nations. So the UN was created in the aftermath of World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history. So global leaders recognize that peace will not be sustained without a permanent system of dialogue, cooperation, and collective security. So the milestone with respect to the history of United Nations was in August 1941. There was the Atlantic Charter, which was started by Roosevelt and Churchill outlined principles for a peaceful world. Then in January 1942, 26 nations signed the Declaration of the United Nations. And April to June 1945, there was the conference at San Francisco draft the UN Charter. And in June 26, 1945, the Charter signed by 51 countries. And in October 24, 1945, UN officially comes into existence. That is why the anniversary of United Nations is always October 24. So now it's now celebrated annually as United Nations Day. So the UN Charter established 4 core purposes. 1, maintain international peace and security, promote friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation in solving global problems, achieve international relations, cooperation in solving global problems, promote human rights and fundamental principles. These are the 4 core programs of So it also the 4 core purposes behind the establishment of the United Nations. So these principles remain the backbone of the United Nations work today. So that's the backbone that revolves on the workings of United Nations. So you can see the origin and evolution of the United Nations, the world before the UN, the birth of the UN, the fundamental principles, the purposes, the core reason for having United Nations. And then it also looked at expansion and globalization of the United Nations. So from its original 51 members,
Excuse me, can everyone please mute themselves? I'm hearing all this background noise, please.
So from the original 51 members, the UN has grown to 193 member states, and that reflects the decolonization in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, the end of apartheid, the breakup of Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, and the emergence of new independent states. So this expansion transformed the United Nations into a truly global institution. The evolution of United Nations role. Over time, the UN's work has broadened significantly. First of all, one of their major agendas is peace and security. They establish peacekeeping missions, mediation and conflict prevention and resolution, counter-terrorism framework in line with the peace and security agenda. The second aspect is the human rights, which has to do with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, the Human Rights Council, international treaties, and monitoring bodies. The next role is development. We know in 2000 to 2015, we had the Millennium Development Goals, and then from 2015 to the present day, we are on the Sustainable Development Goals, and also the development has to do with United Nations Development System reform. Then there is humanitarian action, which talks about refugee protection, disaster responses, global health emergency. And then the climate and the environment. You look at the IPCC, the support Paris Agreement, the climate adaptation and resilience. So the UN has evolved from a peacekeeping body into a multidimensional global governance. So what do we have as UN today? The modern United Nations is a complex ecosystem that includes the principal organs, which we have the General Assembly, the Security Council, the ECOSOC, the International Criminal Justice, and the Secretariat. We also have specialized agencies that have to do with the World Health Organization, the UNESCO, Food and Agriculture Organization, International Labour Organization, the IMF, and the World Bank. There's all the systems that include the funds and programs, which has to do with the UNICEF, UNDP, UN Women, and the United Nations Human Rights Commission. We have the regional commissions, we have the expert bodies and functional commissions. So these systems address issues ranging from global health to economic development, climate change, gender equality, and humanitarian crisis. So why understand the United Nations evaluation matters? Why do we have to understand about the United Nations? United Nations, for instance, the ECOSOC practitioners understand the UN origin and evolution is essential because ECOSOC mandate is rooted in the United Nations Charter. Each role has expanded with the SDG, that is Sustainable Development Goals. Each work is interconnected with other United Nations organs. And then there is effective engagement requires understanding of the broader entire system of the United Nations. Okay, so the historical foundation of this United Nations has to help participants appreciate why we align ourselves with ECOSOC and how it functions and how it contributes to global governance. So the United Nations was created not because the leaders want to come. They are looking for a platform to discuss world peace, world security, development, issues that can integrate the entire world together. And at the moment where there were wars and issues coming up from here and there, so the idea of to have the United Nations came up in this dimension. And that is what has kept, it's been a binding factor that you can see that everything United Nations does is bringing together the entire global community together, no matter where you come from, whether you're from Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Europe, US, we bring them together to have a platform of agreement and resolution of coming together in order to achieve a sustainable and harmonious world. So the UN agenda has the core components of the United Nations. As you have mentioned, you have the UN system, which understand the 6 principal organs, especially the ECOSOC and the General Assembly. Then we have the ECOSOC consultative status. This is where the civil society, the organization, either request to be a general or special or roster status, depending on how you are working along the UN agenda. So, and then you have to also think that through these status, it will be possible for you to engage with bodies like the Commission on Social Development, Commission on Status of Women, Commission on Population and Development, and all these are thematic advocacy commissions that can align with the work and the mission of their organization. So we know that one of the things that NGO does through this region is to, one, attend sections. You have opportunity to attend sections. You have the privilege to get involved in the United Nations once you are admitted into, once you are engaged into any of the status. You have the opportunity to attend and participate at the United Nations function. You also have the opportunity to submit your statement and also deliver intervention. You also have the opportunity to work with any of the member states in mission who understand your mission and align with you with the purpose of their mission, and see how they can merge it with that of their country in order to help you advance the cause of what you are doing in your organization. You also have to know that as an organization with status at the UN, every 4 years there is an assignment for you to do. Apart from the fact you attend sections, you participate and make statements and get involved, there is also opportunity for international networking, learning for one another where you don't do. You know, there is also opportunity for research and learning where you need to have an issue. For instance, if you're having an issue on gender equality, issues about women or about humanity in your organization, you need to also research other countries to see what is really going on in the terms of gender equality across the world. So it gives you opportunity for research and writing, increase in knowledge, and also an understanding of the global community. Another aspect is that you have the obligation to submit your report every 4 years. Once you have the status, your reports are submitted every 4 years. And that will help you to maintain the status of your organization. But what is more important is the diplomatic what do I call it? The diplomatic garment you need to wear in everything you ever you work with the United Nations. And that is maintaining the policies and principles of the United Nations. You don't have to do anything that is criminally oriented or criminally involved when you are involved with the United Nations. Because as soon as they are done, you are now removed. Your organization will be delisted and you cannot have anything doing with the United Nations. So it's always very right to maintain the diplomatic protocol in terms of addressing the concerns working with the United Nations and your involvement, which is very, very important. Also gives you also the opportunity to collaborate with other organizations, and share your advocacy goals. You have a network of, you have NGO committee, you have other committees, that working group of NGO, the working group on girls, you have the NGO branch, that all aspects. And that's why it's always good to have a platform to formulate, to establish a relationship. You might be doing something in the United States, and somebody in India is interested in your organization, in the vision of your organization. So it provides you the linkage and the opportunity to collaborate together. Now, one very important thing is that it gives you the global presence, because you can attend programs at New York, the UN headquarters in New York. You can also attend in Geneva. This is another arm of the United Nations. You can also attend at Paris, another arm of the United Nations. Germany, Vienna, all these are arms of the United Nations, and they're spread all over the world. So you have the opportunity to explore your global potential and increase what you are doing at your own level. So the NGO will collaborate with other NGOs to have a shared goal, learning from each other and being able to understand one another in terms of what you are doing in your own organization. So that's also the component of having influencing your resolution, declaration, and policy outcomes. That is where you can come in, your organization can come, because you can have an idea that you can suggest to a mission. Okay, you want to see, you want to have a university of UN education in my community, and then you discuss with some of your country government and the UN, and see how they buy the idea, and they can now fine tune your idea. It will influence the resolution that such thing should be planted in community across the world, in United Nations institutions. And you give your reason why it will stay. So it gives you the opportunity that your thinking process, your thought process can be developed into a resolution that can be binding for all the member states across the world. Because once this resolution is passed, now it binds all the member states. It becomes a binding fact. That, for instance, you said, okay, February 28th is the United Nations University for ECOSOC education. And then you move the resolution is moved and adopted. Every February 28th, it is celebrated across the world. People tend to tune into that. So it gives you an opportunity for you, a mandate for your ideas to also be recognized. And then there could be declaration and policies that can also bind such ideas. So it creates opportunity for advocacy pathways. If you are in America and you have such a declaration, such resolution, you can take it to any country in Africa and begin to advocate. So it gives you the weapon, the instrument to speak things that has to help with the good development of humanity. Remember, one of the agenda of the United Nations is about development, and development can come in so many ways, of which everyone is involved in trying to have a development that can bind everyone. So we have the workings of so for UN to ECOSOC, and then ECOSOC has what we call Department of State and Social Agencies. So this has to do with a lot of things that are government-oriented, a lot of offices, and then we have the NGO branch. So this you have DESTA, you have the ILO, you have the UN Women, you have the UNESCO, you have the UNICEF, you have the war, every other arm, you have everything that has to do with human development. And then the other aspect, the NGO, and this has to do with every organization that are involved with the United Nations. And that is a process that gives us the leverage as non-profit organizations to get more involved with the United Nations. So we are looking at the ECOSOC mandate, the ECOSOC. The ECOSOC, the United Nations, ECOSOC, the full name is the Economic and Social Council, which is ECOSOC, and it's one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. Its mandate is to coordinate the economic, social, and environmental work of the United Nations. It also has to promote international cooperation for development. Its other mandate is to formulate policy recommendations to member states and United Nations bodies. It also oversees subsidiary bodies, including functional commissions, regional commissions, and expert groups. The ECOSOC also has the role of facilitating civil society engagement through consultative status and for NGOs. It also monitors progress on the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, especially through the high-level political forum that is held every July. So the 2030 agenda simply means that we have a 15-year mandate from 2015 that's going to end in 2030, and that is where we have the sustainable development goals. And this SDG has a 17 SDGs in number, and then the 169 targets. So these came up after the Millennium Development Goals ended from 2000 to 2015. And the next one was the Sustainable Development Goals. So ECOSOC sees this mandate and also ensures that all these are revolved against concerns on human development and relations, peace and security, and all aspects that has to do with the concept of the humanity. So ECOSOC plays a central role in advancing global development, human rights, and inclusive governance. So what is the structure of ECOSOC? The principal organ and segment, the one they have the high-level segment, which engages ministers and government heads of agencies on global development issues. That's one of the important roles or organs of the ECOSOC. It also has what we call the integration segment. It promotes cross-sectoral coordination. That's the ECOSOC. It promotes cross-cultural sectoral coordination. From one region to the other, it promotes that cross-sectoral coordination. Again, the ECOSOC has to do with operational activities segment, which oversees the United Nations Development System reform. Every development aspect that has to deal with the progress of the work of the United Nations is also a responsibility of the ECOSOC. It has the management segment. It handles elections, appointments, and procedural matters. That's under ECOSOC. And then you have the coordination segment. It aligns work across commissions and agencies. Aligns work across commissions and agencies. Now, what are the functional commissions for the United Nations? The functional commissions of the United Nations. So we have the Commission on Status of Women, which has to do with everything that has to do with women and girls, all women across the world. And they meet every March. Like this March is going to start from March the 9th to March the 20th. And all at the United Nations headquarters. So it involves all the member states' participation and government involvement, as well as the NGOs. There's also the Commission on Population and Development. This deals with aspects of population and also human development and everything that has to do with the development of humanity. And it was every April at the United Nations headquarters. There's also the Commission of Narcotic Drugs, which deals with nuclear weapons and everything that has to do with drugs, and it's headquartered in the office of Vienna, the UN headquarters office in Vienna. There's also the Statistical Commission that deals with statistics, financial statistics, human statistics, data statistics, every record of everything that has to do with the United Nations, right from its inception, is under this commission. There is also the Commission for Social Development, which held every February, and they deal with social issues and developmental issues across the world. And all these are binding in every member state. And also the Commission on Science and Technology, which deals off with issues about technological and transformative development across the world. Secondly is the regional commission. We have the ECOSOC coordinates the regional commission, which focuses on 5 regions. We have the Africa region, we have the Asia Pacific region, we have the Latin America and the Caribbean region, we have the Europe region, and we have the Western Asia region. So all these are under the workings of the ECOSOC. Now there are specialized agencies and programs that goes under ECOSOC. Those specialized ECOSOC coordinates agencies like World Health Organization, UNESCO, International Labour Organization, Food and Agri Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and also UNDP, which is the United Nations Development Program, UNICEF, United Nations Children and Education Fund, UN Women, and other funds and programs. These are under coordination of ECOSOC. Of course, I've mentioned the NGO branch, which also is managed by ECOSOC. And for the NGO to be part of it, has to pass through accreditation and receiving a consultative status. We also, once received, we have to maintain the decorum of being a listed organization under ECOSOC, and also align itself to programming reporting, which has to do with their working along the UN agenda. It also has to do with the participation in ECOSOC and subsidiary bodies, that all these commissions, once you are accredited, you are invited to participate at the commission section. You also have the leverage and the opportunity to speak or make intervention on that. You also have the opportunity for people to hear what you are doing at the United Nations level. So the NGO branch also provides support, that are being supported by the Committee of NGOs. So we have the key processes and forums that align with ECOSOC. Of course, we mentioned the high-level political forum, which deals reviews on sustainable development goal progress. Of course, some of us are to be conversant with these SDGs, that's 17 in number, starting from poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, lower level entrepreneurship, inequalities, cultural inequalities, and sustainable environment, peace and security, and partnership. All these are all included in these SDGs. And each of them has specific targets that have total the entire target of these 17 SDGs into 169 targets. And the summation of the SDGs have 5 Ps. Those 5 Ps has to do with, it revolves around 5 Ps, which is people, the planet, the peace, prosperity, and partnership. So everything about the SDG revolves around the people, about the planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And that is the summation of the entire SDG and 169 targets into 5 Ps. Now, on this high level, there is also what we call the voluntary national review system, which are country-led, and also the the civil society and NGOs can also lean on that voluntary national review to come up with the review of what data that is in line with SDG. As we are working on SDG 1, which is ending poverty, you can have your review in a voluntary SDG review on the work we have been doing in their communities. If you are working in 60 countries, you have to come up with a document to provide the evidence of the review that you have been doing. And you can have that review to submit it to any nation, any member state that aligns with what we are doing, and also other international partners across the world, depending on your network and your interpersonal relations that you have established. Of course, there is a ministerial declaration on the high-level political forum, which has to do with outcome from high-level segments. Align it again to the working of the member states in their various countries on the SDGs. There is a platform for NGOs, for youth, for experts also get involved, because during the high-level political forum, you can align with your member states to have a side event at the UN and be able to share to the global community what we have been doing in line with the SDG mandate. So the high-level political forum, which is held every July, are all centered on the reviews on the sustainable development goals. This is the section. Any questions so far?
Professor Ada, it's Janelle. May I ask a question? You had gone back a slide. I'm not sure if you're on the slide that you want to be on.
No, I'm not following the slide. I'm not following the slide.
Yeah, I went backwards one. Yeah, I think we're on that. That's the one I think we should be on now.
I just finished on this one.
Thank you.
Whoa, if we are talking about it, see where I was talking in the high-level political forum. So the ECOSOC have this segment, you see the high-level political forum, which I just shared with you, the SDG monitoring and review, the multi-stakeholder engagement, the high-level political forum deals with voluntary national reviews, which I just mentioned on the SDG. And then the SDG monitoring and review deal with NGOs, where you have to also work in terms of making yourself, the work of your organization to be known within the corners of the United Nations. So the multi-stakeholder engagement deals with every other department as an integrated effort from the United Nations and trying to get partners, and in this I bring the philanthropists, expert ideas, academia, and all what can bring them together under the stakeholder engagement. And they're all involved at any of these sections, whether it's a commission or whether it's high-level political force, they're all involved in doing it. So the issue about ECOSOC and NGO is a mandate that has to help us. If it's a platform for us to be involved with the UN agenda, learn about the United Nations, and also be a part of it at our own level as non-profit organizations. So ECOSOC of the United Nations system is the central engine for coordinating, reviewing, and accelerating the 2030 agenda for sustainable development goals. Now, this 2030, we are in 2026, and we have 4 more years to go to the end of the 2030 agenda. And these are revolved on the sustainable development goals. So efforts are being geared to make sure that there are successes, from global to national to the local, to rural communities, that sustainable development goals is able to respond to the needs and the mission of why it was established in 2015. So that is why we in the NGO community get more involved in the 2030 agenda. Because if you are working at national level or rural community level, you have the leverage to get the SDG to the community through your organization. So efforts that has more action-oriented policies and activities to ensure that by the 2030, which is in 4 years' time, you should have good reports indicating the successes of the Sustainable Development Goals, bearing in mind that when it was established, there was this understanding that effort should be focused on the people, the planet, the prosperity, the peace, and partnership. So you look at this, the 5 P's, and be able to get to your organization mandate or the mission and see which is their target, which is their focus group. What can you do in line of these 5 P's in order to advance the SDG among their target groups? If you are dealing with disability, you are dealing with autistic, you are dealing with children, you are dealing with academics. There are so much things that you should look at. If you are dealing with development, sustainable cities, building infrastructure, or I know someone who does on real estate. So you use that SDG to develop initiatives that help the company or the organization on real estate in order to advance humanity, getting involved. There are also a lot of developments of UN Habitat. They deal with sustainable cities. So if you are dealing with SDG 13 that is unsustainable, you have the opportunity to take your idea and discuss with them to see how you can align with this department to advance good housing and housing opportunity for humanity in their community. So the ECOSOC mandate or the 2030 agenda, you have to look at it. You have to look at it. Okay, you have to look at the strategic coordination across the UN system on the mandates on ECOSOC. You know, it ensures that all UN agencies, funds, and programs align their work with the SDGs. So one of the agenda is to align your work with SDGs. It provides a platform where government, regional bodies, civil society, youth, and the private sector coordinate development priorities and share evidence-based solutions. That is their mandate, strategic coordination across the UN. So across the UN system has to involve every person, everyone, including governments of the 193 countries. It also has the mandate of monitoring and reviewing the SDGs. Of course, this is one of the peculiar things about the high-level political forum. So if you have been working on any of the SDGs and you have a document to prove that you have a review, it's time for you to look for a country to share it with and see how the country can encourage your effort in trying to work with you in terms of the document you have for SDGs. So a lot of SDGs need review, you know. They all need review every year. It's not just this. We have seen the SDGs that an annual review because you know what happened last year will happen this year. So they also review global and thematic SDG process. Sustainable development is the binding factor. That is why everything is geared towards the SDG because it's like a binding factor. It's a binding instrument everybody feels in with. It's just like in your family, you have a family name that is binding. Everybody answers to that name. So the SDG is the binding factor for all the member states, the stakeholders, and everyone that has to engage with the United Nations, including the NGO community. So the UN development system thinks of operational activities segment where they monitor the agency. That's why I said if you're involved with the UN, you have to be clean, you have to be careful, you have to make sure that your name is not damaged, you are not involved in any of the criminal aspects because they are monitoring. You are being monitored once your name is in the system of the United Nations. The multi-stakeholder is the only UN organ with a formal mechanism for NGO consultative staff. So in this situation, that is the stakeholder engagement that all the NGOs align themselves. Because through this stakeholder, you're able to participate at meetings, submit written and oral statements, organize side events, and influence policy, which I have said several influence policy. But for you to be able to have a voice, you must have a mission, a country, a member state that understands what you want to do and be able to work with it. So why does ECOSOC matter to me and you as members of civil society? It is a bridge between global commitment and the national action extending to the rural community. So ECOSOC is a bridge between global commitment and the national extending to the rural, depending on where your organization is working from. If you are working at the national level, then if you are working at the rural community level, then it also extends to you as well. So it ensures that there is implementation of SDGs as evidence-based. Now you are trying to say that children in the community, in rural communities are hungry. They don't have food. There must be evidence that you are advocating. Okay, you show evidence that every month you go and feed 10,000 children because they don't have food in that community. So these are evidence, and you can use that evidence to come up with a report to share with the country what you are doing. A lot of NGOs do humanitarian services across the world. You go for emergency treat, you go for support services and all. So have you been able to come up with an evidence-based report that you can share with that country to see how best you can? Because if life with the UN and member states like left hand and right hand, you want the left hand and the left hand wants the right hand. So these are the kind of experiences that we have that can give us the mandate of coordination within the United Nations. So you also receive coordinated United Nations support through the country, through member states. And then the progress is tracked. Your progress has to be evidence-based. It has to be tracked. There must be proof that your progress is transparent. It's open for people to understand. That is why if you want to work with the United Nations, you must have a website where you put whatever, because at every point in time you are, either you are in social media, any form of social media, they want to know what you are doing. So the consultative status is the arm that has to deal with us in the civil society and the NGO community. And everything we are doing here is your acceptance into the consultative status to give you the leverage, the opportunity to work with the United Nations accordingly. So everything about United Nations is also accredited annually. One, it gives you the annual accreditation that will allow you entrance into the United Nations every time you have. It gives you the annual opportunity, it gives you temporary opportunity. It also gives you the opportunity to sign up for events of the commission, and you have the access, attend to. And all these things are just increasing knowledge base, intellectual property and other lessons. So as an NGO, once you are accredited, you have the opportunity to have reports every 4 years. You have the compliance, you have the opportunity to uphold the UN principles and maintain transparency. You also have the opportunity of being engaged in every department of ECOSOC and subsidiary bodies. And also you maintain current contact and organizational information in your UN system. So these are what that is very necessary when you get involved as an NGO accredited to the United Nations. So we now have the policy process, resolution, and negotiation. First of all, you have to think about drafting. The first step is for you to have an idea. What is your idea? Every child in the community must have 3 square meters a day, whether they are poor or not. So this is your idea. Now you have to look for a functional commission that can help you draft the idea, making it into the UN language. Because one of the things that we do, most of the organizations fail to be accredited because they lack the language. So you must have the UN language in order to be able to look at. Because the committee that reviews your application are about 38 member from all of member states. And if one committee says no, they are not comfortable with what you are doing, the other committee will not do anything the organization will be put aside until you're able to meet up with the requirements of that country. So your idea can turn into an instrument that can help to progress the UN Charter in the work of the United Nations. And then when you do the drafting, the next thing is to go into negotiation. Negotiating with member states, consulting them, discussing the formal and informal meetings to define the idea. You have to consult them, have to discuss with them, at times to organize them, to invite them to share your idea and be able to get them understand the voice you want to include into what they're doing. And then the member state or group of states can submit that resolution to ECOSOC once it's approved. So that is one. And then the first stage is the consideration. If the draft is debated, discussed, and possibly amended in session and meetings of ECOSOC or its subsidiary. So there should that consideration of your idea. Okay, this country, about out of 193 countries, 60 countries are supporting your idea. So it becomes an instrument of testimony. So those 60 countries can now advance it in meetings and be able to convince the other countries that this idea that is coming from this NGO is very important. And then the next thing goes to adoption, because there should be voting on that adoption. The voting, you have to be voted that idea into that time. So once it is voted, the next thing is now to have what is it for implementation. So which means your idea has been accepted, and that becomes a credit to the organization that initiated the idea. Remember, you are just the administrator, and then the who works through it is the member state, and that starting from drafting, negotiation, submission, consideration, adoption, and then implementation and so on. Once it's adopted and accepted into the UN system, it becomes an instrument that goes around the 193 countries and all the subsidiaries of the UN. So I've talked about the accreditation for the staff. So here we are looking at barriers and ongoing improvement, the barriers. One of the things that ECOSOC acknowledged that despite progress, NGOs still face resource constraints. You still have limited participation, you still have geographical imbalances, lengthy accreditation process takes time, because at times it's between plus or minus 13 months. Because of what, we are not the only organization, there are other organizations from 193 countries. So there are times that the committee will have to seek for 4,000 applied organizations and more, and not this. So these are some of the lengthy processes. Of course, it is very political sensitive. Like sensitivity, political will, it has to involve with this country or that. Remember, those approving it are member states, not the NGO. You don't even come in. And if there's need for them to invite you to explain, you could be invited to explanation. The very important is for you to understand why you want to do that, and then understand the language of application. The language you are using to apply for someone dealing with women and peace is not the same language you use for someone dealing with disabled children. So you must align up. You must understand the particular language that they will understand. Why? Because there are some complex languages, that you put in there. It provides complexity in understanding. And once there is complexity in understanding, your application can be trashed. So to address the ECOSOC and its partner continue to explore ways to strengthen participation, including targeted support for NGOs from developing countries. So we have talked about this, the drafting, the leading, and all the rest of it. So, and then again, the innovative solution, what is advanced skills for high impact engagement? We are looking at policy analysis and agenda mapping. We are looking at strategic foresight, youth engagement, the practical tools for day-to-day engagement. If you are working within the United Nations, how do you get yourself engaged with the day-to-day in the workings of the UN? what do you do, and how do you work yourself into an innovative solution in contributing to the United Nations Agreement? So, of course, the NGO branches are here. This is all the summary. And we talk about start to everything I've said has to do with participation, authoritative status, status, reporting, and participation. All these are the. So for you to talk about your business, you need to align yourself with future initiative in line with this NGO plan. How do you report? How do you participate? What is your level of status? How do you consult? These are all these things that need to happen within the United Nations. And that is what NGO is all about. Thank you for me. Any questions? Great. Hello? Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
I do actually.
Sorry?
I do have a question, Prof.
Okay.
My name is Professor Cynthia Obiora, and I'm joining from Nigeria. We have an NGO, of course, and we're trying to attain the ECOSOC status, but I am quite interested in the phrase you use, which is understanding the UN language. And I believe that if you have a document that I can actually go through and read it extensively to understand how to package my foundation, that will really be good for me. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted. That we'll research and let you know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if there's no other question, I want to believe that the clarity in the presentation and this aspect. That if you have more questions, you can share it on the Q&A box, and then if you have any concerns, share it on the Q&A box, and then we take it from there. And then we are going to I'll just give you probably 10 minutes break, and then we'll call 5 minutes break, sorry, 5 minutes, so that the second resource person can get into this. Right, so 5 minutes break. Thank you.
Better struggle to send that. You comment. Very funny.
2 minutes more.
I mean, it's nothing official in the date or anything like that, but we were talking, Alan said, yeah, the group can come and everybody is stay, you know, we'll all, you know, bring air mattress.
Recording in progress.
Thank you again. Welcome back to this second edition. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you. Can we get seated again one more time? Hello, 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 hello. Can you hear me? Thank you, thank you. Can we get back to our seats? Thank you. Welcome back to the
Joy, could you turn your sound off, please?
Trying to mute. Okay, let me mute.
Can you kindly mute yourself? Mute yourself,
Yes.
please. Thank you. Thank you. I hope the 5 minutes break was enough. Thank you. And without wasting more time, the second resource person will come up soon. Before then, we just share the form on the group for everyone, evaluation form. Kindly complete it for each of the courses, lectures in the name of so that for the work of the institution. Thank you. So I would like to introduce oh, she's seated already. So our next resource person is in person of Dr. H. Ripley, who is a distinguished international diplomat, leadership, strategist and a global peace advocate whose influence spans 6 continents. She serves as Director General of International Affairs and UN NGO Peace Ambassador of World of Life Ministries International, facilitating dialogue and partnership through the United Nations ECOSOC platforms in Geneva, Vienna, and New York. So Dr. April is also a diplomat, as I said, a diplomat and a leader and a resource person. So she is going to take you up on the second segment of this training. Dr. April, you have the
Quick question, that evaluation form we fill out at the end of all 3 sections? Can't hear you.
Yeah, can you repeat your question?
That evaluation form that was put in the chat.
Yes, at the end, yes.
At the very end, we fill that out, yes?
Yes, at the end.
All
You
right.
pick up at the end of the course.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to Professor Juni. Thank you for the opportunity to share about something that is certainly affecting all of us every day, as we may not realize it directly, but it is influencing global governance and how our world operates. So welcome to all the attendees. Thank you for investing the time into yourselves for learning to make this world a more humane and civil place. I want to preface my presentation by saying that this is not a political statement. I know many of us have experienced a lot of different things around the world and have different opines about organizations. However, the purpose of this presentation is simply to bring information about ECOSOC, United Nations, global governance. And so, again, this is not a political statement or political presentation. I will share my screen as we begin our presentation. So I am going to speak today about the United Nations ECOSOC policy, governance, and practice, understanding global governance, sustainable development, and policy practice. I will share some things that you may have heard from the previous presentation by Professor Juni, but that is because repetition helps us in our learning. Often when persons hear about the United Nations, they think solely about peacekeeping missions and conflict zones. But the United Nations is a large organization that is for long-term global transformation. Certainly people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnerships as its ethos, but also economic governance, social policy coordination, and sustainable development systems. So the UN, as we know, was founded in 1945 following World War II to prevent war, but also to address the social causes of instability. Those causes which include poverty, inequality, lack of development, and social exclusion. From an historical example, we look at the reconstruction of Europe through the Marshall Plan in 1948. Which demonstrated that economic stabilization was important to reducing conflict risk. And so similarly, ECOSOC was designed as a permanent global coordination platform to prevent economic instability from escalating into security crises. So our learning objectives today, first is to understand the UN system structure, how ECOSOC fits into the UN system. Second, how civil society influences through NGOs and global policy. Number 3, SDG implementation, how the Sustainable Development Goals are implemented. And 4, meaningful engagement, so practical steps for meaningful engagement. When we talk about global governance, we're talking about a system of institutions and processes through which nations and stakeholders cooperate to address global challenges. In my law studies on international law, there is actually a separate course on global governance, because often people think that global governance is just the law. And although the law is one aspect of it, there are other stakeholders and institutions, again, systems and processes that are a part of global governance. So the law is a part of global governance. Global governance seeks to address poverty, things like climate change, public health, education, gender equality, and human rights. So global governance functions through multilateral negotiations, a lot of negotiations. We call this diplomacy, but diplomacy, again, part of diplomacy is negotiation, is mediation, is bringing persons to the table just for dialogue. In many cases, just being able to get persons to speak to each other is one step in getting the issues or the opportunities at hand addressed. We see this in treaties, in bilateral trade, multilateral trade, institutional coordination, and norm diffusion. Some real world examples of global governance: the Climate Change Paris Agreement. We have 196 parties that have agreed to limit global warming. There is no global police enforcement. I'll go into this a little later as we look at some cases. But again, this is voluntary, this is goodwill. In diplomacy, we talk about this as being, just being gracious and adhering to what we call a social contract, certainly amongst persons or institutions, but also, it doesn't look good if everyone is agreeing to climate, and perhaps you decide not to agree to this treaty or this framework that the majority of stakeholders have agreed to. But these are real world examples. Again, we have the global health, the World Health Organization, coordinating pandemic responses, talking about global health guidance and looking at regional challenges in health, financial stability. This is with the International Monetary Fund, which is probably the most well-known, helping to provide financial stabilization to countries that are experiencing displacement or war rebuilding or development in and of itself, and to prevent economic collapse from spreading in regions. There are 6 principal organs of the United Nations. The top 2 certainly are most touted in the news: General Assembly, which meets especially in September. It's a global deliberative body. The second is the Security Council, or what's called the P5. There are 5 permanent members of this council and other members that that rotate out depending on the region. There has been also talks about extending or expanding the number of permanent seats on the Security Council because of the fact that the council was established after World War II. And so the major countries that are involved have permanent seats there. But as the world has evolved and grown and just different changes, there has been a call for even the United Nations as a body to also adjust some of its previous agreements and frameworks. Number 3 of the 6 principal organs is the International Court of Justice, and this addresses legal disputes that occur between nations. 4 is the Secretariat, which is the administrative arm of the United Nations. 5, the Trustee Council. 6 is the Economic and Social Council, which is what we will address today, which addresses the development and policy coordination. Now, ECOSOC is unique among all of these organs because it connects governments with civil society. It coordinates 15 plus United Nations specialized agencies. And these are independent international organizations that focus on specific technical or specialized needs that range from health to labor to finance to agriculture. Some of the organizations that you may have heard of is the Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO. We have the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. We have the International Labor Organization, ILO. Yes, this is important because these organizations address not just local, but international standards and for what should be. Should children be working in certain industries, or what age should those children be allowed to work in? These are things that these organizations address. International maritime, sometimes we don't think of maritime, but this is shipping. You know, there's certain standards for shipping, whether even across languages, also goes into international aviation, civil aviation organization. So whether you board whatever airline you choose to fly, there are certain standards. Everyone has a seatbelt. There may be no smoking. Where escapes are, exit signs, lighting along the floor. These organizations are a part of what helps in global safety, global health, labor, finance, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to these organizations, but especially ECOSOC is important to that. Some others are the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is located in Vienna, Austria, the UN office there. We have International Telecom Union, ITU. I have a colleague that is part of the board for the ITU. You say, what is that, April? This is the organization with your mobile phones and telecommunications, right? So that if you're on your phone in Europe, but you're traveling into Latin America, the standard, the, you know, how certain, maybe your phone carrier is one in Europe, but there's now a partner in Latin America. So when you cross the borders, you're able to still use your phone, or even SIM cards. All these things, these organizations, sometimes we don't think about every day, but they are a part of ECOSOC. Again, they're independent. They work with the United Nations. And so the goal is to bridge development and diplomacy. So ECOSOC's governance looks at the United Nations Central Platform. It is the United Nations Central Platform for economic cooperation, for social progress, for sustainable development, and for global policy coordination. Now, ECOSOC derives its authority from chapters 9 and 10 of the UN Charter. So that's a little homework Professor Juni will give, but I won't go into deep detail on that today. But the authority comes from chapters 9 and 10 of the United Nations Charter, and it mandates this, that coordinating economic and social work of the United Nations, conducting policy reviews, promoting higher standards of living, and facilitating human rights and social progress. So with ECOSOC governance, we have specialized agencies that coordinate work across who? What's the who? The World Health Organization, across UNESCO, which is the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization, the ILO, the International Labor Organization, and more. There are functional commissions that oversee policy development in key areas. Again, this is all in ECOSOC governance. There are regional commissions that ensure regional representation and coordination. And then there's civil society organizations, which engage NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, and stakeholders globally. The membership is 54 states, elected by representatives from UN member nations, 3 terms, rotating membership to ensure fresh perspectives. It has a regional representation, so it's balanced participation from all world regions. And the General Assembly elects It is a democratic selection process by UN members. So again, the elections are held by a secret ballot, and it requires a 2/3 majority. And it has 18 seats that are renewed each year. The seats are distributed by geographical region. So for Africa, there are 14 seats. For Asia and Pacific, there are 11 seats. For Eastern Europe, there are 6 seats. And for Latin America, the Caribbean, there are 10 seats. And there are 13 seats for Western Europe and others. So some of the members, just as of 2026, from Africa include South Africa, Senegal, Zambia, the United Republic of Tanzania, Algeria, Nigeria, Senegal. From Asia and the Pacific states, we have Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka. From Eastern European states, and I'm just giving you some, we have Croatia, Poland, Russia, Ukraine. From Latin America, we have Antigua and Barbuda. We have Dominican Republic, Haiti, Mexico, Uruguay, Paraguay, Ecuador, St. Kitts and Nevis, Peru. From Western Europe, we have Australia, Canada, Finland, Germany, Turkey, Norway, Austria, France, Netherlands. So why is this important that the membership rotate? Again, so that one small island developing states also have a seat at the table. African nations have a seat at the table. Latin America, Eastern Europe, all giving input into how global governance and policy are shaped. And this also ensures the legitimacy in global economic governance. So what are some functional commissions? So these are key ECOSOC commissions that are driving global policy development. One, the Commission on the Status of Women, which will be meeting in March. We're almost there. It's the 28th of February, but in March, CSW 70 will meet. So the Commission on the Status of Women, which is to advance the gender equality and women's empowerment worldwide. It negotiates global gender policy. It was produced by the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and it influences, again, national gender legislation. Number 2 is the Commission for Social Development, addressing poverty, employment, and social integration. It developed the SDG Global Indicator Framework that we talk about, where there are only this is quite extensive, over 230 indicators to ensure standardized global measurements. So again, these commissions for social development, the Commission on Population and Development, which monitors demographic trends and population policies, the Commission on Science and Technology, promoting innovation for sustainable development, statistical commissions, developing global statistical standards and indicators. Why is this important? Because you want to make sure that as you measure data, whether it's quantitative and even especially quantitative more so, but also even if it's qualitative, what are the questions that are being asked? What measurements are being given and what measurements are being reported? These are important because it allows for standardization. Now, these 230 plus metrics are designed to track the progress of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Ambassador,
yes.
So we're not able to see your slides. You're still on
the
cover page.
Okay, let me see. I apologize. Is it showing now at all? You're still on the cover?
It's still on
the cover.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. My apologies.
Some people can see it though.
Oh, some can? Okay. Okay, let me try again. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The cover, right?
Okay. Yes, that's the cover. Can you see the learning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
Thank you. Yay.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it for just a moment. So the objectives today, we're going to talk about the UN system structure, civil society influence, SDG implementation, and meaningful engagement. I hope you're able to hear me. I talked about global governance, that it's not just one entity, but it's actually a system of institutions and processes through which nations and stakeholders cooperate to address global challenges, addressing poverty, education, gender equality, climate change, public health, and human rights. The 6 principal organs of the United Nations: General Assembly, Security Council, International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, the Trusteeship Council, and the Economic and Social Council, which the primarily of this discussion is today, for the development and policy coordination for the United Nations. ECOSOC's governance: we talk about the United Nations Central Platform for Economic Cooperation, Social Progress, Sustainable Development, and Global Policy Coordination through specialized agencies such as the WHO, UNESCO, ILO, other independent agencies, from maritime to aviation to telecommunications, et cetera, et cetera. We have functional commissions, which oversee policy development in key areas, regional commissions, which ensure regional representation and coordination, and then we have our civil society organizations, which engage NGOs and stakeholders globally. We talked about ECOSOC membership, which are 54 member states for 3-year terms that rotate, ensuring regional representation based on population and regional finance as well. Just ensuring that there's great representation from not just the large developed states, but also the small island states, the developing nations as well. So this is important because the information that comes, the perspectives that are shared, this is important for developing global policy. And the General Assembly election, which is a democratic process, takes 2/3 majority and every member votes. Let's try this here. Can you see this slide? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So here we talked about the functional commissions. These are the key ECOSOC commissions that drive global policy. Commission on the Status of Women, Social Development, which addresses poverty, employment, social integration, population and development. The United Nations Development Fund does a lot with this, and it's a very coordinated effort. Professor Junie and I serve as members of an NGO and special consultative status with ECOSOC called Word of Life Ministries International. And in our Geneva symposium, we had a colleague of mine who's done work with UNDP as well as WHO. She's also an advisor in consultant, and we learned a lot because sometimes we look at things whether they're natural disasters or maybe there's military conflict, and we think, oh, we can just go in and save the people, just put them here, move them there. But it's not as simple. There's a lot of coordination that goes into the work, including, as many of you may be familiar with, the International Commission for the Red Cross. What the communication, we talked about ITU, how will we communicate to persons on the ground, how we communicate to other stakeholders. So it's not just one entity or the United Nations. I've had colleagues ask me, well, United Nations, can't you just send your military, just send? And it's like, no, it is an organizational body that recognizes the sovereignty of individual nation states, that works together diplomatically to address issues and challenges, but there's not just this one large gavel that goes, boom, you shall do this. And I say that because even with the work that ECOSOC does and the organizations that work in reporting, that work to help extend the mission of the United Nations and its charter, it's a complex, it's dynamic, and oftentimes it is holistic in its work. So there is no one immediate, and we'll look at some case studies that will share more about this with you. But I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important that we understand that from a larger perspective. Commission on Science and Technology, one of the examples I gave was the International Agency for Atomic Energy Development. We talk about that proliferation of weapons and different things in technology, AI, robotics. A couple years ago now in Geneva, there was an entire symposium, high-level meeting about robotics. We think, oh, that's science and technology. It makes my world easier. Yes, let's do that. The ILO goes, okay, well, international labor, what does that mean for persons who work in these particular regions that depend on, human equity, right? Working. Will these robots replace them? If so, then what's next? So again, we talk about the complexities, even within these organizations, not just what they report, but the complexity of how they may engage with others. Food, right? Technology, which is being used in food. So the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, as well as the International Fund for Agricultural Development, may also, cross or have stakeholder opinions about where science and technology is going. Those who are involved in climate, the United Nations Climate Change Fund may also have interest in what's happening with science and technology. So again, I share this with you because these organizations, ECOSOC, again, they're holistic, but they're also dynamic. The Statistical Commission helps to develop global statistical standards and indicators. So again, when you're collecting data, you want to have some type of standardization in reporting, standardization in the application of the data. If one country is only asking or taking so many measurements, but another is taking more, well, there's not going to be any congruence. There won't be any congruency in the reporting. There will not be, maybe the results that come or the ideations that come from the model won't be balanced. It'll be asymmetrical because we don't have enough information for it. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But the SDG global indicators, so they have tried to look at specifically, and I think I said that's 230 plus metrics to track the progress of the 17 developable goals, which span social, economic, and environmental targets. So what are these indicators? Poverty, hunger, health, education, equality, water. These are just some of them, and they've been done through the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, it actually started as Millennium Development Goals, but changed in the early 90s, just kind of addressing where the world is headed. Are we close? How do we know if we're close to some of these goals? Well, it's going to be from the data that's collected. The key aspects of it is to make sure that the indicators are standardized, that they are used to measure multiple targets, that there are tiers, there are different tiers specifically based on methodological development and data availability. And some of these indicators are broken down by age, by disability. There's a lot of things that go into it. So this work is ever evolving and it is continual. The Commission for Social Development addresses aging, youth employment, disability policy. Again, think of that is access, physical. Maybe it could be inside of a building. Is there a ramp? Is there an elevator? It could be having Braille or sign language. So there's a lot of things, even access to education, specialized learning. So again, we go into the education side. We also have here the youth, right? Because there could be youth. So you could see how these organizations could also intersect and have to work together because there's multiple stakeholders. So these organizations help to establish measurable frameworks, and that's why it's important. And these frameworks drive global policy development. So NGO consultative status and policy practice. Let's go here. So in Article 71 of the United Nations Charter, it authorizes ECOSOC to consult with non-governmental organizations, enabling formal civil society participation at the United Nations. Now, this was groundbreaking I know now we may think, oh, okay, this is great. But at the time, it was groundbreaking because it gave formal civil society participation in intergovernmental governance. I'll say that again. The reason that Article 71 is so salient is because it gave formal civil society participation in intergovernmental governance. How did it do this? It formalized NGOs. It is the only article in the UN Charter that specifically mentions non-governmental organizations. This is Article 71. It enables ECOSOC to grant consultative status to NGOs, creating a structured, institutionalized dialogue rather than just allowing direct voting participation, which is reserved for states. Only states can vote. But now ECOSOC can grant consultative status to NGOs where NGOs can have dialogues. This could be written dialogue or it could be verbal. You could be attending a meeting. And I know Professor Juni has done this in New York. I have also in Geneva, where we have shared openly in meetings with nation states present. And that's what ECOSOC has been able to do through Article 71. It allows NGOs to act as conduits for information, helping to educate public opinion and also to inform the UN as well. The scope, it covers international, national organizations that are concerned with human rights, with economic, social, cultural, and education matters. So here are the type of statuses, I'm sorry, the types of ECOSOC consultative status. One, there's general consultative status. General consultative status. And this is examples with a broad mandate. International Save the Children's Alliance, the International Chamber of Commerce. You could have the International Organization for Standardization. This organization, actually, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, was founded in Geneva in 1947. And it's an independent, non-governmental organization with national standards in technology, manufacturing, food safety, and services to help facilitate trade and ensure quality and safety. For those of you who are in the business arena, these are organizations like ISO 9001 for quality management or 14001 for environmental management. So again, these organizations have a broad mandate. They can propose agenda items, but they're larger international NGOs. The framework for this operational status with ECOSOC came from Resolution 1996/31, which means that ECOSOC could establish consultative status with organizations on July 25th, 1996. It helps to define eligibility of the criteria as I'm going through these three different levels, establishes reporting requirements, sets conduct expectations, and also provides suspension mechanisms. So, number 2 is special consultative status. Now, these are organizations with specialized expertise, and it's usually the most common category, right? So we're looking at things like Amnesty International, International Bar Association, Human Rights and Justice, the Center for Justice and Accounting, the American Psychiatric Association, the International School of Social Work, the Global Youth Action Network, or the International Dialogue for Environmental Action and Public Assistance. So all of these will qualify as special consultative status, and there are hundreds of them. But the key here is to realize, again, that these special consultative status organizations have specialized expertise or address one specific or maybe two specific areas that are important to ECOSOC's development and frameworks and global governance. And the third level is the roster status. And these are organizations that occasionally contribute, technical contributors usually. As far as the rights, and this is important, we talk about rights and responsibilities. One of our colleagues always reminds us of that in the law, that you have rights, but there are also responsibilities. So what are the rights of non-governmental organizations? Well, you are able to attend UN meetings when it's open for you to do so. You can submit written statements, as I shared earlier. You can deliver oral statements. You can organize side events. You can network with diplomats and UN agencies. Recently, during the United Nations General Assembly, was a part of several side events that were organized there. Our organization, our NGO, has also organized side events outside of the UN as well. So you have that right to do so. But then there are responsibilities. There are quadrennial reports. You have to demonstrate SDG alignments, right? So there's 17 sustainable development goals. So when you have an event, you want them to address one or more of those goals, maintain transparency, follow UN protocols and values, and failure to comply can lead to suspension. So this is important. So some of the practical policy influence examples, I shared a couple of slides ago about CSW, which is the Committee on the Status of Women, which will be CSW 70 occurring in March, very shortly. And NGOs, again, they'll have written statements. There'll be lots and lots of events, lots and lots of discussions, but all to the end of gender equality and granting access either to education, work, dignity of work, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of things to look at with that. So it reminds us that grassroots organizations can have an impact on global policy and influence that global policy. In Article 3 of the UN Charter, it talks about the principles of conventions. And Article 21 is the expression, the opinions, and the accessibility of information. And these are important because it's not just how you convene a convention, but it's also who obtains access to that. And this was especially important for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which was a grassroots organization, which now has become adopted in the United Nations for persons with disability to enjoy, I love this, full equality, full dignity, and full human rights, civil, political, social, and economic rights. This was codified and organized by the Convention on the Persons with Disabilities. And it is, I'll just give an example. In 2009, the United States signed it, but has not yet ratified it. And there is a difference between codifying and ratifying. So codifying is when you organize it and say, this is what we'd love to see. Ratification is when it is formally approved and legally binding. So it's not yet legally binding. Some of the accountability mechanisms for NGOs, again, I shared all this here. You could see it on the slide. Let's go to the next one. The Sustainable Development Goals for the 2030 Agenda was adopted in 2015 by all UN member states. You have the photo of these goals to the right. 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There are 169 targets. I shared some of the indicators earlier, but this obviously cannot just be something that one organization does, but the collective of organizations, even you as civil society. You may be working in a community with young women, or maybe you're working with those who are in agriculture. Just yesterday, I was in a conversation with some farmers, and we're talking about access to food, right? You know, how do you make this sustainable? How technology is impacting that? Even energy. Are there alternative methods of energy that could be used in agriculture? And then it always takes global partnership. I talk about SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals, because in life we are interdependent. And my great grandmother reminds me of this picture she would show me of a turtle on a fence, and I'd say, "What does this mean?" And she says, "If you ever see a turtle on a fence, April, be reminded that it didn't get there alone." And so I remind us that we don't get to where we are in our lives alone. It does take the efforts and community, which is important. And I look at ECOSOC and its work as a broader community and global governance that reaches out and extends itself, but then also that community through NGOs and IGOs that reach back in to ECOSOC and working together in a multitude of stakeholders to make the world, again, the people, the planet, the prosperity, the opportunity across various indicators and sustainable goals. So let's look at a few case studies. I won't be able to go into all of them that we would have just for our time, but one I'd like to talk about is girls' education and global policy change. And this is the Malala Fund and the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. Now, many persons may know of Malala, a Nobel laureate, Malala Yousafzai, and her father, Ziauddin, who founded the Malala Fund. And her story was she had gone to school and was shot by an assailant, but she fought for the right, or I should say really her father as well, right? Because sometimes we look at who were stakeholders and we think, well, it was just Malala and other girls in the community, or maybe it was the women in the community. But in this situation, it was also her father. And so stakeholders and partners, sponsors, allies could be persons not necessarily just within your NGO, but they could be others who also have a heart or compassion or interest in the work that maybe you're doing. But in this instance, this initiative started in 2013 for 12 years of free and quality and safe education for girls. So millions of girls were out of school despite global education commitments, right? Remember, I talked about there may be a policy or something that the UN supports or ECOSOC supports, or even the Office High Commission of Human Rights, but still, it is not necessarily legally binding, right? It's a larger social contract through the nation states, through citizens, through organizations, this global governance. Remember, there's processes, there's institutions. And so civil society advocacy helped to elevate the girls' education into a central global policy priority. So what role did ECOSOC and NGOs play in this? They submitted policy statements, hosted side events during UN sessions, partnering with UNICEF, partnering with UNESCO, providing field data and advocacy work to say, you know, when women are educated, it helps to lift them and their families from poverty. Provides even, you know, social things, self-actualization and self-agency, psychological benefits, health benefits. So all these things that came in through information through NGOs were able to be passed on to ECOSOC. And how did this impact the policy? Well, it contributed to SDG 4, which is quality education, the inclusion of gender parity targets in global education policy, helped to increase funding commitments to girls' education worldwide. And so the real outcomes were what? Global recognition of girls' education, the importance of it as a development priority. There were multi-billion-dollar international funding commitments. These programs expanded into Africa and South Asia, into the Middle East. So what lesson can we learn as an NGO? Well, that evidence-based advocacy plus UN partnerships can shift global funding priorities, but also draw attention to areas in those indicators, those 230 plus indicators, which can be affected. And so there's several groups that I know worldwide that are doing work. A colleague that does work in Rwanda for widows in the agriculture space has taken that now into what we call value added and production. So not just growing the food, but also how can we add value by producing other things from. This is happening also in the Caribbean and other nations around the world. So again, sometimes what one group or organization starts can create a spark or an idea of collaboration in another. Let's look at climate. A case study on climate policy and civil society influence. Here we have the World Resources Institute and the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, a little bit about this background. The World Resources Institute was started in 1982 by the MacArthur Foundation, and they wanted to improve the lives, protect and restore nature, and stabilize the climate. On November 4th, 2015, the UN climate change decided to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And this was to combat climate change, to enhance resilience and financial flows into what it would take to help keep our climate and our world at a certain temperature and not go above it. This climate agreement, through the Paris Agreement, with climate policy, with the World Resources Institute, was a coordinated effort. Now, again, I started this presentation with a disclaimer that this is not a political statement. So I will share information and you can have your own opinion about it. But we want to, just for the purpose of this presentation, certainly talk about how this is a global, has global impact. Again, at one of our forums with our NGO, we had a professor who talked about climate change and some of the readings that they're having, especially in the oceans. I feel like the waters tell a lot, to show that the rising temperature was causing some fish to die, also helping certain bacteria to flourish in a particular region of research where he was working. So climate change required global cooperation and science-based policy. So how was ECOSOC engaged? Civil society organizations submitted research to UN climate bodies, participated in high-level political forum discussions, provided technical policy recommendations. Again, his lab was one that worked in submitting information to other organizations that were connected. So there are a lot of stakeholders, remember? So even the NGOs may work with labs, may work with social institutions, could work with other entities that provide information for their organization as an NGO, which in turn can then provide that information into ECOSOC. So what was the policy impact? Well, civil society contributions helped to shape what we call the National Climate Commitments, NDCs, created transparency and accountability frameworks, climate financing mechanisms. The real outcomes were the Paris Agreement in 2015 that was adopted by 190 plus countries, the expansion of climate monitoring and reporting systems. There was greater inclusion of private sector and NGOs in climate solutions. Again, there's still some work to be done. Some countries agree, some countries don't agree. And again, that's the sovereignty of those countries to do so. But the key lesson here is that NGOs influence global treaties through research, through advocacy, and coalition building. The last case that I'm going to bring up for this particular training is poverty reduction through data and policy. BRAC, which stands for the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. So BRAC and ultra poverty graduation model. Now, this group, BRAC, was actually founded post-war in Bangladesh in 1972. And its goal was to reduce poverty, required scalable solutions, right? So extreme poverty, certainly after war, there is going to be some need for rebuilding, reestablishing communities, and what would that look like? So through ECOSOC engagement, they shared evidence through UN forums, participated in policy discussions, collaborated with the United Nations Development Program and the World Bank. Now, BRAC took a community-based approach, and this policy impact, the graduation approach, actually became a global poverty reduction model. BRAC's values are 1, innovation, 2, integrity, 3, inclusiveness, and 4, effectiveness. But its goal was to graduate people from poverty and not just treat symptoms. Not just treat symptoms, but to graduate people from poverty. So for 18 to 36 months, this is the graduation model that they use. 1, there was training. So training for capacity building and social services were provided. 2, there was mentoring and coaching. 3, there was seed capital. So there was asset transfers. 4, there was financial inclusion. 5, there was consumption assistance. You know, how, with what you develop, what you grow, how do you hold on to it? What should you hold on to? And then what should you place back into your business? They had market value and chain analysis. Again, there was an 18 to 36 month program. So it wasn't just, I'm giving you this fish for the day, but it was, I want to teach you how to fish. I want to show you areas where maybe you can extend and create more ponds, protect the environment around. The outcome, it's been adopted in 40 plus countries. It has helped millions transition out of extreme poverty. It's influenced international development policy, and it aligns with SDG 1 of no poverty. So the key lesson here is that local innovation, models and frameworks can become global policy throughout ECOSOC engagement. And what these cases show us is that civil society engagement through ECOSOC can lead to global treaties and agreements, funding commitments, policy reforms, international policies and partnerships, scalable development programs, and local action to global policy impact. High-level political forums. ECOSOC also hosts high-level political forums, which reviews global SDG progress annually. We have governments that are represented, national representatives reporting on SDG progress, NGOs, again, civil society organizations that provide insights, private sector, companies that demonstrate sustainable practices, academia, research institutions that contribute to evidence, youth and faith communities, grassroots voices that are shaping agendas. This agenda, which is annually meets the high-level political forums, and it reviews the voluntary national reviews. So there's a whole process. Professor Juni spoke to that a bit this morning, but countries are utilizing these forums, countries such as Finland and Rwanda, to showcase measurable progress and success in various areas that are part of their development goal agendas in their nations. So the role of NGOs in SDG implementation, community programs, there could be direct implementation of SDG aligned initiatives, research and advocacy with evidence-based policy influence, expert guidance for governments through policy recommendations, monitoring progress, right? Independent accountability mechanisms, and for grassroots data, local insights for global reporting. So again, all of these are pieces to this puzzle through community engagement, monitoring, research, advocacy, and policy recommendations. What are some of the best practices aligning with SDGs, ensuring that programs directly support specific goals, regularly attend UN sessions consistently, building partnerships, again, collaborations, alliances, sponsorships, allyship with governments and different agencies. NGOs also host events, organize side events to showcase your work, what you're doing, maybe partnering with another NGO or another institution that is also working towards the same goals. And also to help measure the impact. What impact are you having based on what you're applying in this specific area? Is it tangible? Are there areas that need to be reevaluated? Are the inputs to address the problem? We look at three different things. One is, have we correctly identified the problem? Two is what we're applying to the problem. Is it the technical correctness to the problem, right? So for example, if I have a leak in a water main, is my just putting a rock up going to stop the water from flooding? Probably not. I need to go to the source where the water is flowing through. So making sure again that I'm directly impacting what the opportunity is or the challenge is. I like to use the word opportunity. Sometimes you'll hear me say that instead of challenge, because opportunity it does something in your body with the chemical. And I know we may have scientists here, professors, so I won't get into the deep science of it, but just to say that when you think of what you see as a challenge or an obstacle, but see it as an opportunity for engagement and an opportunity to bring change, your mind goes into this creative process of innovation. And so it completely changes even the chemical makeup and how you see the world. So lots of opportunities there, but we just want to make sure we're addressing it. And then also, who are the stakeholders? Who is this impacting locally, but also regionally and perhaps globally, like we gave the example of climate change or education of young girls. So key takeaways as I conclude are: one, access. So ECOSOC, NGOs bring access, direct participation in the UN process. It also brings influence, helping to shape international policy decisions, partnerships, connecting with key global stakeholders, global visibility. You amplify your organizational reach. This is what ECOSOC provides through its policy, its governance, and its practice. And then impact, being able to meaningfully impact and change the world. There's a quote by a renowned anthropologist and socialist, which says that we should never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. And so I'll conclude this presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for, again, being here. Here are some reference materials, some UN documents, UN websites, and recommended publications to help you and guide you on the work that ECOSOC is doing, again, in understanding global governance, sustainable development, and policy practice. Thank you. Dr. Ada, the floor is yours.
Wow. Thank you, Excellency, Dr. Ricky, for that expansion on this executive part. Was it really executive? I can't hear you. Was the lecture really executive?
Yes, it was.
Oh, great.
Power packed.
Yes.
Well, very well.
Executive to the nuts for both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your listening. Well, thank you, Excellency, Dr. Ricky. Education, though, in fact, when I was growing up, my parents used to make us understand that nothing you learn is a waste. No knowledge is a waste. So I know that having you guys to this executive course today, the first course this year, which we do every time, you've been able to align these lessons into what you are doing in your various capacity, either as a non-profit organization as a philanthropist, as a coalition, you must have learned one or two things that will make it add to what you already know. So we are working on the mission of intellectual capacity increment through knowledge. And I want to believe that the two courses, the two presentations have been able to do one justice on the other. And just in the next 5 minutes, I just want to give you some of the lessons that the two lessons are able to accomplish.
Could you please repeat what you just said at the end? I missed it somehow. Didn't understand.
So I was trying to let you know that the one, I started by appreciating you all for attending, signing up to attend the executive courses before this year, and being able to have one or two information that you can add to your intellectual capacity to advance what you are doing in your various establishment or non-profit organization. So in these two courses that you just listened to, we have the mandate to provide information on governance and mandate, the structures and mechanism of annual cycle of ECOSOC, a stakeholder engagement and multilateral participation, leadership, diplomacy, and implementation skills. So that all these are centered on ECOSOC as central platform for economic, social, and environmental coordination, a mandate for global sustainable development, bridge between global commitment and the national community, as well as the rural community. We also have to look at the structures in terms of functional commissions, regional commissions, expert bodies, high-level political forum, which has to do with voluntary national review on SDG, and then key forums and segments that we need to work, align the work of our organization effectively. Then we have the stakeholder engagement and multilateral participation, where we talked about the NGO consultative status and civil society engagement. With your acceptance, if you are working into the NGO consultative status, it gives you a global leverage in order to expand the work of your mission to sustainability. Of course, we know about the statement, intervention, side events, partnership with missions, coming up with your intellectual property ideas to discuss, advocate with member states and other UN agencies. It also provided you the knowledge of partnership and global expansion on the work of your organization. Then we talked about the leadership, diplomacy, and implementation skills, which 90% of what Dr. Ripley said was focused on leadership and diplomacy. So we talked about the way to draft policy briefs, negotiation input, diplomatic protocol and consensus building, and also evidence data and evaluation in SDG implementation. So the summary of the entire course has been summed into these 4 pillars with diversities of examples. So I want to believe that you have been able to do one or two impartations into what we do. And then the next course will be on July 25th, and the course title will be Strategic Integration of SDGs into Organizational Planning, Partnership, and Impact Measurement. And then again, before we round up, we have the form, evaluation form. Kindly complete it and then return back. And again, if you have any suggestion you want to suggest, but it is time for you to come up with your an idea that can move for resolution and negotiation. Let's put this topic or this course into practical activity. Come on, use what you are learning. Come on with a topic for resolution, and let us see how far we can advance it. Thank you all for coming. There's no other question. Thank you all for coming, and I want to thank Dr. Ripley for her time and input to this course at this time. Thank you for busy schedule. So, yes, I appreciate it. Then, so that is where we is. Any other concerns?
Thank you, Professor.
Yes, thank you. I do have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, come up.
So my question is for Ambassador Ripley. Thank you so much for that presentation. I understand and know that the United Nations is incredibly vast, and there's many different segments, as you were sharing, different divisions. I come from the world of media and I write. I have been asked and I continually to write for the Mental Health Journal, which is one of the different periodicals, and it's the 34 Gallery. What I'm curious is because I know there's many other periodicals and journals and magazines in the United Nations, is that within one of these structures? How does it all fit together?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you're asking what UN entity would mental health be a part of, or how you could engage?
Yes, I already write for the 34 Gallery, which
Sure.
I believe is the mental health journal.
Okay.
That is part of it. Where do journals and periodicals fit in within the entire structure of the UN?
Sure. So that's a broad question as well, because you would want to get, I'm thinking of mental health. To me, first thing that comes to mind is the World Health Organization. And so submitting journals, so you could go to the World Health Organization website and you could search for mental health. There is a comprehensive, what they call a comprehensive mental health action plan that is a part of their agenda. So again, each of these entities have their own agenda into the broader agenda. So I would start there. With that, there's something they have again regarding mental health. There, I know that for a fact, and they've been doing some work even within the United Nations on mental health and well-being. So there's also the World Federation of Mental Health as well, and I'm sure they're working with the WHO or in some type of collaboration. But I would start there.
I'm in a
Okay.
in a meeting.
So to clarify
Can I call
my
you
question,
after the meeting?
Yeah, please, Julia, can you mute yourself?
to clarify my question, I already write for one of the different magazines, and
Okay.
it falls on the website for 34gallery.org,
Okay.
which is, I was told, the mental health journal with what they do. So I also know there's other journals you can also write for in there. I just got placed in the mental health category with what they do. There's just not one organization that oversees that piece. They kind of fall under all the different divisions, is what I hear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a part of it. But they do have, I think it's something called an atlas. And what I would do is simply send an email in for your inquiry, specifically what you like to do, how you would like to engage, and then let that organization give you more specifics to that.
Okay. All right. I already write. I'm already so I'm
Sure,
in the
but I
process.
mean, you
I
could
just don't
be
know where it falls.
exactly. But I mean, what do you're writing to what? Would you like to make a presentation at a WHO meeting? Would you like to be considered as, so there's when I say
They gave me, yes, they gave me a list of topics to write articles on,
okay,
and I'm published monthly for the
okay,
last year and a half.
so you should be.
In addition to what,
But I just don't know where it fits in the whole organization. So I was curious.
Right. I think it's one of the spokes within the larger umbrella for health.
Got
But
it.
Donna, am I pronouncing that?
Correct.
Donna, I would engage them and say you would like to present. You would like to share your article, not just write for it, but go to the next step. And at one of their next meetings, whether it's in Geneva or something in New York, and say, I've written articles for this number of years, and I would like to be more involved and perhaps present on one of my articles. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll follow back through the lead on
Yeah,
that.
that'd be great.
okay, in addition to what Ambassador Claire just told you, I feel you are thinking of how to get your article involved with the United Nations, right?
Right. Because I mean, writing every month, it's published every month, we share it every month. People are reading it. What are the next natural steps? And I don't know where any of that fits within the United Nations.
Okay, apart from World Health Organization, there is a NGO Committee on Mental Health, and there is the media department at the United Nations. So what you need to do is let us have a discussion after this to know which direction you want to take and see how we can advise you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other question or concern? Or do you guys want us to start another course?
I have a question.
Yes, sorry.
So in going along with what Donna was saying there, I'm a published author and I write for a lot of magazines on aging and the aging crisis and all how that affects employment, what corporations need to be doing to prepare themselves, what families need to do to prepare themselves, kind of the realities of that. So how would someone like me who's interested in having articles published with some of these readers in these United Nations magazines, where would we start? Who do we contact to say, could we write on this subject for you?
Okay, just as we just pointed out, there's nothing about humanity that is not within the four corners of the United Nations. The United Nations has UN Day for old people, aging, a committee of aging, and that. All we need to do is to, if you have a private communication on that, what you tend to do, they will see how to get to that department or that section. There is I think the UN Day for old people was in December 13th or something. And December 10 was the Human Rights Day. So all these days are all within the 365 days of the year. So it depends on whichever is your interest. Your interest on old people aging writing is excellent because they have resolutions on that. And I think in October, Sunday, there is Old People's Day, Commission of Conference at that. So, but we need to explore on those areas and be able to share with you what we think.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Are you okay with that?
no, I was not aware of that. But I am interested in that. So thank you for that information. Okay.
There's someone raising his hand is up.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, go ahead.
this is Dr. Duyile. I wanted to find out what is the quickest way to get an update on the status of an ECOSOC application that has been in the system for quite a while.
Well, that has to do with the Department of the NGO branch. As I said earlier, the issue about status, they take a lot of applications from 193 countries. And they meet twice a year. Okay? And of recent, UN is short-staffed. They really have, I think they are really cut down a lot. So a job that was done with 10 people is now done by 1 or 2 people. So it takes time. So what we need to do is that once there is no question or any negative attack on the organization, there's nothing you can do than to wait for the organization to come. You can't change it up. You can't follow it country by country alphabetically. Okay?
Thank you.
So thank you all for coming. There's no other question, and let's get to work. Let's get to the next stage. Apply what come out with your resolution. Let's see how we can do draft to deliberate on renegotiation. We can do that, let's plan it, and then our organization is ever ready to help you. Come up with your ideas and then get involved. Even if you want to do events at the UN, our organization can help you get to that. All right? It was good having this section with you all, and I'm sure that the president of the Unicycle International University appreciate your participation and wish that the lessons will be impactful in advancing and progressing your work in your community. So I'll call on Dr. April to say 1 or 2 words before we can start. Yeah, Ambassador April. I say 1 or 2 words before we can close.
Yes. Well, I first again just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share today. Thank you to each and every attendee who was a part of today, because you evidence the work, the continuing work of the United Nations locally and globally. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for continuing to write, to speak, to advocate for those who are in various fields of influence, whether from education to poverty to women to developable and sustainable cities. Thank you for your work, and thank you for being a part. Thank you to CICA International and to CTADA for your continuing work, evidencing SDG 17 in partnership for the goals. So thank you again, and have a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you. And everyone, can you be on camera? Anyone who put a camera, can you take photograph of us here? Can be on camera, let's take a photograph. David, you are not on camera. Can you be on camera, please?
Fefe, come on. Oh,
Yes, who has a good camera? Take off the good one. Make sure you don't cut. Yeah. Are you done? All right. Thank you all for coming, and let's get to work. The next one. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Prof.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you,
session.
bye,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Sign the evaluation.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All of you. Thank you all.
Bye, bye.